Uh, Computation of genomics and microRNAs in cancer. Professor Bhattacharya has published about 200, more than 200 odd papers in all the reputed journals all over the world. He chairs the Biotechnology Information System Network, as well as the Life Sciences Expert Committee on FIST programs of the Department of Science and Technology, and chairs the Task Force on Bioinformatics. Computation biology on bioinformatics, computer biology, and system biology. He's the former vice president of the Indian National Science Academy from 2011 to 2013. Professor Bhattacharya is a Robert McNamara Fellow of World Bank, was awarded the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, which is one of the Indian highest science awards by the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research in 1994. He is J.C. Bose National Fellow of the Department of Science and Technology and an elected Fellow of Indian National Science Academy. He has received the Aryabhatta Medal of Indian National Science Academy in 2015. It's going to be very interesting to hear Professor Bhattacharya. I've known him personally, I've interacted many times, and it's always a pleasure to listen to him and learn so much. He's got so much to share with us. Welcome, Professor Bhattacharya. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Samir, and thanks ORDI for inviting me. Today I'm going to talk about, as Samir said, very, very kind words. He sort of said various things, and it's kind of second innings of our life, starting this organization, World Without GNE Myopathy, and this organization is working to find cure for GNE myopathy and other rare, mostly neuromuscular genetic disorders. And we started this in kind of when we realized that our daughter has this particular ultra rare disease, and that led us to actually start this organization. Hardly anybody at that time, there was hardly any diagnosed GNE myopathy patients at that point of time. And also there was very few, one or two clinicians knew about this disease. Anyway, I just sort of start off by just telling people what this particular disease is, because a lot of people are not even aware of it. It's a recessive genetic disorder, and it affects skeletal muscles. Interestingly, it does not affect quadriceps also. It does not affect other smooth muscles like heart muscles and diaphragm muscles. And it is an adult onset, so it has generally starts from anywhere between 20, and it has been seen to appear even fairly late. It's a progressive loss of skeletal muscle function, starting from distal muscles. And quite a few of the symptoms overlap with other diseases like LGMD and Charcot-Marie Tooth syndrome. Eventually, patients become wheelchair bound within, say, about 10 years of the onset of the disease. And later, of course, the patient lose almost the function of a lot of other muscles like neck muscles, etc. Diagnosis is clinical examination, gait analysis, pathology, and of course, DNA sequence. Right now, as I said, when we started this organization, hardly there were very few diagnosed patients. Currently, we have at least no more than 300 diagnosed patients in India, and there is no treatment available right now. Just for the science part of it, being a scientist to do that, what is this GNE gene that causes this problem? There is a sugar in our body called sialic acid, and it's an important sugar because that plays a part. And this sugar is present in almost all tissues. In fact, brain is brain is one place where the maximum amount of sialic acid sugar is present. And this gene, GNE gene, is a little complex gene. It does two functions, two biochemical reactions actually, and this plays a critical role in production of this particular sugar, sialic acid. The important part of this is that sialic acid is present in almost all tissues. As I said, brain has the highest amount of it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, nothing happens in any tissue except for skeletal muscles. And we still don't understand. In fact, some of our work is towards that direction. Why muscle should suffer if there is a mutation in the GNAG. The biology, the loss of this, I don't want to go into details of it on this. As I said, that one thing we see is that the sialic acid sugar level goes down in these patients, but whether that is the only cause of this disease, not clear, because when patients were given sialic acid in a clinical trial, it didn't really affect much. So the trial was abandoned at the phase 3 level. World Without GNE Activity, as I said, was set up in 2015 as a patient support and advocacy group. And of course, our mission was, as usual, generate awareness of GNE myopathy among patients, India as well as globally. And in fact, interestingly, right now, large number of clinicians are aware of this. And we are really getting a lot of new patients coming up. Every week we see some new patient or other who has been newly diagnosed. Quite a few clinicians are more aware of this disease. But our major goal is to accelerate development of a therapy for GNE myopathy because there's nothing available right now. And if you are diagnosed with it, the patients, essentially nothing. It's like saying that, okay, we can't do anything for you, you suffer. And these patients live very long, so they suffer all their life. Okay, so that's why I said our major goal is to accelerate development of a therapy, make this therapy available and accessible to all patients. I think once the therapy comes out, we'll try to do that. And then, of course, provide support to patients for leading a fulfilling and safe life. And we run a WhatsApp group so that the patients, their questions are answered and support is given to them. And unlike many other diseases, these are adults. And this creates a lot of other problems because some of the patients get diagnosed after they are married, they have a kid, or they are at marriageable age. It creates a whole lot of different kinds of social problems that are not seen in other cases. So what is the philosophy of WWGM? Most of all the patients will not be able to access drugs unless the drugs are developed and manufactured in India. And we strongly believe in that patients will be able to access drugs if they are developed as well as manufactured, at least manufactured in India, and support all possible approaches that will help India to become Atmanirbhar in terms of drug. Like many other drugs we have become. Look at COVID vaccines, we have become Atmanirbhar. And that's because we were able to actually develop as well as manufacture these vaccines in India. And I think it's the same approach we should use for rare disease drugs. So what are the activities? Organization patient, we do patient interaction sessions and awareness conferences. We have done for clinician, neurologist workshops to make them aware of GNE myopathy and how to diagnose them. And we, part of other groups, we lobby for favorable rare disease policies and enhance funding support in India for particularly for research. That's something that we constantly talk about whenever we get opportunity. Publishing policy papers and editorial comments in journals and in the press. We have done not much in the press, but in the journals, we have come out with a lot of policy papers, and including clinical journals as well as scientific journals, so that it reaches to the people who are handling funding, etc., for research. General strategic scientific funding in gap areas. We have been funding in a small way certain areas of it, and I'll talk about a bit more. Synerging available scientific expertise in India. We have expertise. Unfortunately, they are all directed to various things, including cancer. There are so many big projects running on cancer. There are hardly any project run on rare diseases. So, and we have the expertise, and people have to, small change in their attitude can actually help us to get more people working in this area. Utilizing resources, infrastructure, and drug manufacturing capability so that we can make use of them. We have measured this thing. In one of our interactions with one of the US universities who work on rare disease, they said that they used Serum Institute of India for getting some contract manufacturing done. Why can't we do it in this country? To form a strategic collaboration with international organizations, companies, research labs to tap the latest knowledge and technologies. And we are talking to some universities in USA who have the necessary expertise in this area. So we have a website that gives all about GNE myopathy. And we talk about that website. We organize Patient Day every year. This year, we organized the 4th Patient Day event where we talk about patient-centric things, as well as we make them aware of the latest scientific development that is happening here. This year's Patient Day, we had a speaker from National Institute of Health, as well as one speaker from University of Massachusetts at Worcester. We actually major conference we organized last year. And in this conference was on muscle and diseases. There were 29 speakers, more than 300 participants in this. And Dr. Vijayaraghavan actually gave a plenary talk, and Dr. Dhawan also gave a plenary talk on this. And we had panel discussion. It was a major outcome was initiation of myomission. This is something actually Dr. Vijayaraghavan suggested. After his talk, we had an interaction session. Then he said that, you know, we should actually come out with something called a myomission, a major approach towards development of drugs in this country. That's something that came out from it, and I'll talk about myomission a little bit. Many other workshop and other things we have. For example, 2017, we had many of you participated, develop a scientific agenda for research on rare diseases. A large number of people from all over the country came and participated in this, and we came out with a report on this meeting. Also, then we were part of aims to develop a policy for cure of rare diseases and national initiative on rare diseases. We jointly organized with AIMS along that. And then we also did a discussion meeting on gene therapy for curing rare genetic disorders to figure out how much of strength we have in this area in this country. So all this thing, and many of this has been published as a report. And this was carried out a major meeting on GNE myopathy itself, which we organized with a large number, 11 countries around the world came. There are many speakers came from all over the world to participate in the meeting. And finally, we had a patient discussion. And generally, their requirement was that we should try to find cure, and we found out that the patients are not willing to contribute so much to the cure. They said that the government should support development of this, and that was generally the opinion of most of the people who participate. So what is our research agenda? We want to use multi-pronged approach to developing therapy based on our understanding of the biology of the disease. That's very important. Use 2-3 different approaches, not just one approach, because in case that something doesn't work out, as far as possible involve established research groups rather than creating new research groups. Try to use established research groups, because then the lag period will be much less. And strategic collaboration with companies and research groups. Okay, that is important, because in that case we need not have to wait till for developing everything in-house. Promoting platform technologies, and that is very important, because platform technologies like gene therapy or antisense-based exon skipping, some of these technologies are not disease-centric. They can be applied to multiple diseases. For example, gene therapy can apply to hundreds of diseases if you have a group. And this is what many companies like Sarepta are doing. They're developing the platform, then using it for hundreds of other diseases for this. And we need to develop that. Helping establishment national register and better patient identification system. And that's something, is very important for it. Some of these can be very important. We actually, WWGM had a small kind of registry of GNE myopathy patient that helped us to actually publish a paper on a founder mutation that was not known before. And then, of course, the regulatory environment needs to change, and we need to really make it much more accessible and much more easily should support actually development of the drugs in India. I mean, should not be on the way, should not cause problems, but should be more supportive in terms of development. So we have supported a couple of projects, and also currently in the process of supporting a few. AAV vector development for GNE myopathy, a gene therapy, a basic system was developed in Narayana Nethralaya Foundation. They have shown that it is possible that it can be done. And we need a cellular model to test some of the vectors. So we supported that some projects in Narayana Nethralaya as well as the Indian Institute of Science Education Research at Tirupati for that. So we have given grants from our meager resources for actually initiating work in this area. We have made scientific contribution into it, and this is the paper that I was talking about. This is from essentially data collected from patients through our organization, which helped us to document the cases, then look at the mutation spectrum, and then identify a founder mutation that were present. Interestingly, one of the observations that came out was that there's a large number of Gujaratis that actually have the pathogenic mutation that is present in it, and in fact, we estimate that based on our analysis that about more than 40,000 patients are supposed to be in India, whereas currently diagnosed could be roughly between 300 and 400. So very underreported disease. And as I pointed out that this is an adult onset, there are a lot of social issues. People don't want to get diagnosed even if they have problem. This is also kind of a study that was carried out just to find out why muscles get this disease and not other tissues. What is the reason for that? Why skeletal muscles suffer? So, and this is something that points towards that direction. So in the end, I'll come to this myomission, where as I said that it came out as part of our conference on muscle and diseases. So a proposal was submitted for funding to Department of Biotechnology, and just 2 days back we have received comments. So we have to modify it as per the comments, and then we'll resubmit it after modification. So what is this proposal about? It has an integrated approach to development of therapy, and most of the therapy development is based on already some work that is going on. There are few patents, there are technology that's already being developed and being shown for other things for this. So it has some research that will go in understanding why the disease biology, and that will help us to find markers for it. This will have animal and cellular models. These models are very important. The animals are very important to test whether your therapy is working or not, and to generate preclinical development. And drug and therapy development will be there. That is, of course, the major part of it. And you can see that, and here we will be looking at viral-based gene therapy, non-viral gene therapy, messenger RNA therapy, oligo-based therapy, and small molecule therapy. All these things will be looked at by groups which has the expertise in this area. And this therapy that has been developed would be tested in animals, and would be, of course, also tested for toxicity, etc. Then, of course, we'll have clinical centers we have proposed, which would have patients and patient data. They will diagnose, etc., and carry out something called natural history. Natural history studies are very important for eventually designing clinical trials. And most of the diseases in India, the natural histories are have not been done. You need to understand quantitatively how a patient is going to progress during, let's say, in a year or 2 years' time, so that you can actually check the efficacy of your therapy. And that has to be done in different population. Indian patient may behave slightly different from other patients. Maybe natural history has been done in USA or some other place, but that may not be always applicable for us. So this is a very, very important part of it. And I find that most of the Indian diseases, even very common Indian diseases, there's no natural history. For example, sickle cell anemia, there's no natural history of Indian patient that people have done. So that's something that we plan to do. Of course, there will be a data center that will generate this disease progression, quantitative models for disease progression, that is mathematical models, based on the data generated by clinical centers. And we also have an outreach group along with some patient groups who will participate. So who all are there? There are 23 institutes, 53 investigators across the country. Almost all top institutes are involved in it. And it's a massive scale project. Somehow that we managed to actually put it together, and now we have to modify it to see. Once this gets funded, we hope to lay the foundation of developing rare disease drugs in the country. And we hope to get cooperation for the drug manufacturer, particularly the manufacturer that make biologicals, to help us manufacture enough molecules to do large scale, lesser trials at that point. So I'll stop it here, and we'll happy to take any questions that we
have. Thank you, Professor. That was a very, very interesting and I think a very encouraging presentation from your side, because you are not touching only the lives of people who have been diagnosed with GNE myopathy, but you are presently working on for the entire rare disease community. And I think that's a commendable thing and a very, very encouraging, I would say, a development for all of us to know that there is somebody who is working to see how the rare disease community can benefit by finding a cure, possible therapies for them. I now throw the floor open for discussion with Professor Bhattacharya. If anybody has any questions, they can ask him and we can get clarifications and continue with this discussion. Anybody from the participants?
I had a question.
Yes, Ashish,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Bhattacharya. Just a question on how scalable is antisense oligonucleotide therapy for developing cures for multiple rare diseases at one go?
Yeah, so question is that, antisense oligonucleotide therapy works kind of in two situations right now, and they work very well. In a third situation, it requires a tremendous amount of development. For example, antisense oligonucleotide, in fact, 3 or 4 situations works very well. It works very well when you have something called a stop codon. That means that your mutation causes protein to get truncated, means it stops right there. So, and this would, what it does is that it essentially doesn't produce a mature protein. And this is a situation where antisense oligonucleotide can work, and some diseases it works really well, because what you do is that the region of the gene where the mutation is, you kind of skip that part and you take the rest of the part. This skipping is a good way to take care of it, but it may not work for each and every disease, but it will work, definitely works for quite a few diseases. DMD and SMA is a good example for that. Now, our thing is that if you make it in India, of course, it will be much, much cheaper than what the DMD therapies are actually coming out to be. Second situation, it works. There is a slightly different technology, but it also uses oligonucleotide. Is something called nonsense suppression. That means that this mutation is kind of suppressed so that just the mutation is skipped rather than a genetic region is skipped. And that can also work in various situations too. Third area that antisense work is when is the dominant mutations are there, when the mutation causes a toxic product to be made, and you can use the antisense to block the expression of that protein. So in that sense, you can elevate that. So that the development technology in India, there is a group, they have developed technology. They have a US patent, in fact, for a synthetic method to make oligonucleotide. So, and they are working towards how to make this oligonucleotide reach the cells in a better way. So I think that once this is developed, a range of diseases, it will work, but not for all diseases. That
Okay.
we have to be complete.
And this group, is it in the academic space or is it a patient driven?
No, this is an academic space. This
Okay.
is a part of it. They are part of it. They're based in Kolkata and they're part of our myomission now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sir, I think what you presented or what you discussed today, it's common to all of us. We are all, the moment we talk to any patient in our respective groups, the first thing that they talk about is therapy, a drug being available to cure the ailments that they are suffering for, and the underdiagnosis or the misdiagnosis that we see across the board amongst all the rare diseases. So how do you think we can, firstly, what do you see as the major obstacles or problem areas in development of these therapies in India? I mean, you are talking about to say again and again for these therapies to be available for the Indian population. It's very, very important to develop and manufacture these therapies in India. So you have worked very extensively in this area, and you've already set up this group for doing research on neurodevelopmental disorders. So what do you think is the major problems that we are presently facing in the country to accelerate this, or to set it up in the first place and then to accelerate it?
So there are two problems, and one is that problem is awareness among our clinical team. When I talk to my friends, most of the biologists know me and Sudha reasonably well, even the youngest in the country. So they listen to us. So, but when somebody goes and talks to them about rare disease, they don't think this is a major problem. For them, maybe cancer is a major problem, though contributions, cancer is difficult to make because of the international, all the big drug companies that are in it. So the first major issue is that to explain to the scientists that rare diseases are not only that rare, they're excellent biological problems, that they can get their awards, they can do everything by working on rare diseases. And in the meanwhile, they can actually come up with therapy for it. So awareness among scientists is one problem. Second problem is that research resources, what I think is very, very important. For example, models, animal models. Hardly there is one place. There is one place in Pune which actually is totally dedicated to developing models. There are hardly any place to it. Even the models that are available, for example, Rett syndrome, mouse model that are available, you can buy it. There is no place in India you can actually get it. If somebody develops a system where you can get all these models which are available there, bring it to India, rear it, then it becomes much more easier to, because even if you work it in the lab, some molecule, unless you test it in animal models, etc., it won't. Same is cellular model. Today, a Japanese group lab has cellular models, or what is called iPS cells, available for almost any rare diseases. I can just go and buy it, but they are for Japanese patients. So from Indian patients, there is no place where there is a depository or something. People are developing this model. So the models are one major problem that we face in doing it. And third, of course, manufacturing, but I think manufacturing will not be a much problem. India is pretty good at it. Once we reach that level to do that. So if we can make a lot more scientists working in this area and provide the research resources like models, etc., then I think we'd be able to do that. That's not him. I think we have the capability to do that.
Absolutely, sir, because I think at the end of the day, it's our own people abroad as well. I mean, you're right that the resources are available there, and it becomes much easier for the same people when they are working in an environment which is, I would say, more resourceful. It becomes much easier for them to work and initiate those kind of research therapies but do you think, sir, I mean, one of the questions, one of the points that you mentioned is in the awareness meeting that you had, parents did come out and said they want a therapy, but funding, no, they would want the government to take that initiative and do that. Do you think it's something that research can be done individually by the respective groups or collectively rather than depending totally on the government?
I think it can be done. I mean, many people are doing it. BMD people, Parent Project, Ambrish and his group, they are doing it. They have really done quite remarkable actually in this area. And it is possible to do it. For example, if number of groups come together and generate enough money, a gene therapy platform can be developed in the country. Once the platform is developed, it can be applied to almost anywhere. And if you really look at the kind of development, in fact, we have a paper that we have submitted for publication, where we have actually looked at all the efforts being made in rare disease drug discovery all around the country. And we are looking at the companies, we are not looking at published work. What companies are saying, that what are the kind of products there. It is quite an eye-opening that the number of gene therapy products that are coming out. Because essentially this is a platform. Once you develop platform like Sarepta, someone develops a platform, and now the gene editing platforms are being developed, then it goes maximally. And I also point out, Moderna is getting into, originally Moderna started with their main interest was in rare diseases using messenger RNA therapy. But because of COVID, they diverted them into making vaccines. And they've been so successful now that they can get into, with that money that they generate, can get into it. Messenger RNA therapy is one area, there's a platform. Once it is there, it will work for almost every disease.
Absolutely.
So we need to develop platform. Government can provide support for developing platform. For individual diseases, maybe we need to get into individual disease-based patient organization generating enough funds to do the basic clinical trials.
Professor Sudha Bhattacharya also would like to say something. Professor, can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks.
Please,
thanks,
please go
Amir.
ahead. Please go ahead.
I was just listening to the discussion, just wanted to add 1 or 2 points that, as Alok already talked about platform technologies. So a lot of genetic disorders, about which we are familiar, are caused by defect of a single gene, the monogenic disorders.
Yeah, sure.
And the gene which is affected is known. So the platform technologies like gene therapy or gene editing or mRNA delivery, they are all applicable to monogenic disorders, of which we know that there are hundreds of them, in our country. So the question you were asking, funding by patient groups versus the government, the thing is that, we need a huge amount of funding. So patient groups also have to pitch in, as Amrish has done a really Herculean job, but that funding will never be sufficient, because there are a lot of pitfalls that when you start research, the failure is more than success. So that you need a huge amount of funding to overcome that hump. So once you overcome the hump, then things start falling in place. But in the beginning, you fail a lot. So, but unless you are ready to fail, you will never succeed. So,
absolutely,
the government has to pitch in, and once they give us money to, like we know how to do gene therapy, but to bring it to patients is a whole different ball game. So even, for example, mRNA technology, which is working so well for COVID vaccines, when it comes to genetic disorders, the same technology should work theoretically, but in practice, the difference is amount. Because for vaccine, you need just a small amount of mRNA, but for genetic disorder, you need a huge amount, because it has to go to the whole body and to every tissue. Sure. So those things have to be tackled. And I think as patient groups, we need to really lobby with the government to give funding, because we are not even asking for huge amount of funding. Even if suppose they are willing to give us 300-400 crores, it will be enough to make a big beginning. Whereas we know that a single dose is causing 16 crore. So if they give us 300-400 crore, I think we can set up, we can pump in money into the scientific research system in India, which charges up scientists, because, when they see funding, they really get charged up and they want to put in their best. But if the money you're giving is a few lakhs and you're expecting a big outcome, that doesn't work out. So they just run away. So that's where, as patient groups, I think we can impress upon the government that ultimately it will be much more fruitful for the country if right now, while you're supporting patients for whom drugs are available, right now you also parallel you pump in money so that in future we can make our own drugs. For that, we need support from the government in a big way. So that's where, as patient groups, I think we should fight for it.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. We are also thankful Dr. Rashid Merchant is with us today. Dr. Rashid, any comments from your side? Dr. Rashid, can you hear me? Okay, we'll take him up as he probably is on mute right now. He's not there. You also mentioned, Professor Bhattacharya, about these involved established research groups. What exactly are you meaning by that? What kind of research groups? Are you talking about the pharma groups, or are you talking about the research which is being done by the pharma companies, or the like, for example, institutes like CCMB? Are they, or IGIB? You mean, are you referring to those?
I don't remember exactly what context I said that, but what I said that like CCMB is developing messenger RNA platform, okay, and there is a company called Genova which is developing messenger RNA vaccine. Now, if the platforms are developed by CCMB, but CCMB can't develop the technology, it can develop, but manufacturing. So I think it will be a great idea to have a production thing, whether the production is going to be within the research groups or research establishment, or the production will be separate from research establishment. That's something that we have to really work out. The technology can be developed in more academic research groups, but then production has to be developed somewhere else. But there is a plenty of contract manufacturing currently going on also by gene therapy, for example. If you have a system, you can actually get a contract manufacturing done for your clinical trials to be done, though these are frightfully expensive to do it. But I said that we need that. We need to develop technology platforms in the sense that, particularly three, in a sense that, and then of course we'll find, once we can demonstrate that drugs are there, this thing, I think private company will come forward to offer manufacturing of this.
Samir, I can just add to it, Samir, what you asked about established groups. See, our philosophy was that we go to people who are already working on some parts of the problem that we have. For example, there are people who are very familiar with muscle cells. Now every biologist will not know how to handle a muscle cell, but there are people who are working on muscle for their own interest. Now, if we tell them that, see, there is a muscle disease, so can you look at this? So they'll be much well versed to handle a muscle. So similarly, there are people who are working on how to deliver a gene for anything else, maybe for cancer. So we tell them that, can you do it for us? You have the system, but now that gene has to be delivered into the eye or into the brain or into the muscle or whatever. So then they can modify for us. So like that, the established group, they're already working in it, but they have to twist it a little bit for our to suit our needs. That was, otherwise, if you start from total scratch, then it's much more difficult.
I sort of give an example. My mission, we have someone who's developing non-viral gene therapy system, and they have already have patent and publications on non-viral delivery in skin cells. So we are asking them that, and they're very willing that you modify it in a way that it goes into muscle cells. But it can eventually, it can be modified to go into brain cells or any other cell that you can. But that's what it is. The technology should be established in the sense that technology, at least some form, should be there. That's our motto when we were setting up my mission.
So I agree with you, because I mean, while we, on one hand, COVID has actually, I would say, taken over the entire world at this point in time in terms of the research which was happening, and predominantly everybody started scrambling to find a cure for COVID, and it was the sheer numbers which attracted everybody, because the whole world was actually infected and everybody was wanting to have to find a cure and be the first one to come out with but at the same time, it has also opened doors, just as you mentioned about mRNA. That, I mean, it's something which has shown to the world that if you if you have that determination, it would be easier, it would be possible to find a cure for anything which is there. It's only a question of creating that awareness, creating that, I would say, the need. And it has to be justified in a manner to say that, yes, everybody has a right to live and everybody needs a cure, irrespective of the numbers that we are talking about. Because it's not important that whether we are saving one life or we are saving 1 million lives, everybody needs to live and everybody needs to have that cure possible. Anybody else who would like, I mean, I can keep asking questions because I've got so many, but anybody else, और कोई, विकास जी आप कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे?
डॉक्टर आलोक भट्टाचार्य, मुझे थोड़ी इंग्लिश कम समझ में आती है, लेकिन जितना मैं समझा आपने बहुत सरल तरीकों से बात करी। मुझे थोड़ा सा आप मिसाइनस म्यूटेशन, पॉइंट म्यूटेशन और म्यूटेशन के बारे में थोड़ा सा समझाएं और अच्छे से, कि एक्चुअली ये जो जेनेटिक डिसऑर्डर होते हैं, हम कहते हैं कि ये पॉइंट म्यूटेशन है, ये साइलेंट म्यूटेशन है, ये मिसाइनस म्यूटेशन है, ये एक्चुअल में किस तरह से रेयर डिजीज को प्रभावित करता है या रेयर डिजीज पैदा करता है?
अच्छा, ये विकास जी, मैं नाइस टू सी यू, आपको बहुत दिन बाद मुलाकात हुई, नाइस टू सी यू। विकास जी, ऐसा होता है कि हमारे में डीएनए सीक्वेंस तो आपको मालूम है, एंड डीएनए से फाइनली प्रोटीन बनता है। तो डीएनए में कुछ कोड्स होते हैं। प्रोटीन जैसे एक डीएनए सीक्वेंस जो जीएनई जीन का है और किसी और जीन का है, ईच जीन का डीएनए सीक्वेंस अलग होता है, और लेंथ भी अलग होता है, उसका सीक्वेंस भी अलग होता है, और उसमें कोड होते हैं। तो कोड हम बोलते हैं ट्रिपलेट कोड, उसमें 3 न्यूक्लियोटाइड की कोड होती है, एंड एक कोड मीन्स एक 3 न्यूक्लियोटाइड कोड जो होता है वो एक स्पेसिफिक एमिनो एसिड को वो करता है। बट ऐसे कोड हैं कि उसमें 61 कोड, तो टोटल 64 कोड है। 61 कोड तो ऐसा है कि जो एमिनो एसिड बनाते हैं, 3 कोड जो है जिसको हम स्टॉप कोडॉन बोलते हैं और नॉनसेंस कोडॉन बोलते हैं। दैट मीन्स वो हो तो प्रोटीन आगे नहीं बढ़ेगा, तो वहीं पर जाके खत्म हो जाएगा। इट्स लाइक स्टॉप, बोलेगा कि बस यहीं पर खत्म करो, सेल उसको रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं करता आगे जाके, तो वो तो नॉनसेंस हो गया। एक होता है कि 20 अमीनो एसिड है, 61 कोड है हमारा, तो ये है कि जो एक अमीनो एसिड के लिए कभी कभी ज्यादा कोड भी हो जाते हैं। मीन्स किसी अमीनो एसिड का 4 होता है, किसी का 6 होता है, किसी का 2 होता है। तो हो सकता है कि 2 डिफरेंट कोड एक सिंपल अमीनो एसिड को एक सिंगल अमीनो एसिड को कोड कर सकता है। तो उसमें कोड तो सीक्वेंस अलग है, तो उसमें आप चेंज कर दो बट अमीनो एसिड चेंज नहीं होता, तो वो साइलेंट होता है।
ओके,
बिकॉज आप डीएनए चेंज कर रहे हो फिर भी अमीनो एसिड चेंज नहीं होता। और एक और होता है जिसमें आप डीएनए चेंज कर रहे हो, अमीनो एसिड चेंज हो गया बिकॉज कोड ओडी चेंज हो गया, तो वो मिससेंस म्यूटेशन बोलते हैं। तो मिससेंस म्यूटेशन में अलग अमीनो एसिड आ जाएगा, उसमें हो सकता है कि प्रोटीन का फंक्शन खत्म हो जाए। साइलेंट होगा तो जनरली इसका कोई इफेक्ट नहीं होता, और नॉनसेंस कोड होता है तो वो तो ट्रंकेट हो जाता है, दैट मीन्स वो छोटा ही बन जाता है जहां पर भी हो। तो वो तो पूरा जनरली नॉनसेंस में जब स्टॉप कोडॉन होता है तब तो उसका इफेक्ट ज्यादा ही होता है, वो काफी सीवियर माना जाता है। सो इन तीनों का ऐसे ही है।
ये पॉइंट म्यूटेशन की जब बात करते हैं, पॉइंट म्यूटेशन,
ये सभी पॉइंट म्यूटेशन की बात कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा, पॉइंट म्यूटेशन, ठीक है। अच्छा, मेरा अब इससे एक जो और सवाल पैदा होता है कि जैसे हम ये बात कर रहे हैं कि हमारे बच्चों के अंदर मिसाइनस म्यूटेशन हुआ या साइलेंट म्यूटेशन हुआ या नॉनसेंस वाला हुआ। जैसे मैं कई बार सुनता हूं कि एक बच्चा पूरी रामायण बोल रहा है, पूरा गीता पढ़ पा रहा है, 4 साल का बच्चा पूरा कैलकुलेट कर रहा है, तो ये भी क्या म्यूटेशन के कारण ही होता है सब कुछ? ये भी कि ये 6 साल के बच्चे ने
म्यूटेशन तो सब जगह हम बोलते हैं, वेरिएशंस भी बोलते हैं कि लोगों में वेरिएशन होता है सीक्वेंस में। एंड हमारी जो पूरी प्रॉपर्टी है, जैसे हमारे नाक का शेप क्या है, कान का शेप क्या है, बाल कैसे होंगे, सब कुछ ये वेरिएशंस के लिए होता है। डीएनए में कोई 2 आदमी आप ले लो, उसमें लाखों में वेरिएशंस होते हैं, बट उसमें से 1-2 ही ऐसे होगा जिसमें कुछ नेगेटिव इफेक्ट होगा। वेरिएशन तो बहुत होते हैं।
Well, we have exceeded our time today. It's so interesting. We can continue. I think Dr. Anubha Mahajan, who was to present today, she's not well, and we will be asking her to join us on some other day for her presentation and discussion. So, any more questions for? Yeah, Prasanna ji, I think you would like to say something.
Thank you, Alok ji. Although we knew that you are into research, but today we got an overall view what exactly you are doing. Generally, we were referring that Alok Bhattacharya is doing some research on GNE homeopathy, but today we got. But when you asking from a common man perspective or as a parent, what is whenever research comes to mind, we always think about 8 to 10 years or 12 years may happen or may not happen. So given the current situation in India of our rare disease patient group and support system from government, what should be the reasonable expectation if some PhD starts research like you, bringing them, from bench to bedside, whatever they say? That is one.
I think,
and second,
that's a good question, and I think Samir was asking, you were asking. I think they're very relevant questions that you are asking. That's why most of my mission doesn't have much of basic research. Basic research is there are काफी diseases में we don't know कैसे होता है. I mean, how the mutation affects, why the mutation causes the disease. That also we don't know. If we know it, of course, it helps to develop therapy. But I think for Indian context, maybe few scientists want to do this, let them do it. And that would be a great thing if they do it. But in terms of therapy development, let's take all the positive results that where people have gone, and let's use that as a framework to go forward. So our thing is that we know that, for example, exon skipping works in many diseases. So let's develop exon skipping technology, maybe develop better synthetic technology, and better delivery technology. But as we know already that exon skipping works, because it has been shown 100 times. We also know gene therapy works. We know AAV9, other things works very well. So let's develop that, make it better. Now we also know gene editing is working. So let's develop that. So I think what we need to do is that take a technology which has shown some promise, and we have some expertise in the country, and then develop it further, so that we don't thinking about research that so much of uncertainty, that will not be. So that's what I think our strategy should be, and that's the strategy we are also using.
Okay. So my second part of the question is, what should be your minimum expectation from the government? Of course, Dr. Sudha also just now mentioned that minimum 300 to 400 crore funding is required. Assume tomorrow if the government announces 300 crore funding.
How do she's asking for 3-4? No. I thought she said 3 or 4 crores to get started, not 3 or 400.
No, 300 to 400 crores if I'm right.
No, not 300 or 400 crores.
400 crores.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I was misunderstood.
Being positive and optimistic, assume that tomorrow government announces 300 crore research funding for rare diseases. How do we prioritize disease condition? What is the basis? Because one, we have absence of patient registry. Second, we have few people like you who are working and very close to the government and scientific community, where becomes the top of the mind recall, and there are certain conditions which are maybe easily addressable, but those patient groups are very less. Either they are not active or the patients are very few in numbers. So how do you think the government should prioritize condition given if there is a funding available?
I think the money should go on developing the platform technologies if they are giving only 300-400 crores. But I think a lot of money can come, like government supports, DBT supports, DST supports, a lot of basic research in biology. So, all diseases offer a great opportunity to, I don't want to go too much detail in it, but they are great opportunity to do basic biology. For example, the way we work is that quite often we work is that in some mammalian cell, we create a mutation by this thing. We generally create a mutation to see how it affects. We create mutant mice to see how it affects. Here we have different, 4,000 different genes are mutated in 7,000 rare diseases. These are natural model to study the function of these genes, 4,000 genes. So we are also saying that why not use it? If you want to do only basic research, fine. But why not do basic research in rare diseases? Okay. And in the sense that you take this as a model to do that. So I think if government is giving only 300, 400 crores, I think that money should go in developing platform technologies. Once the platform technologies are very well developed, then working on individual diseases may not take too much effort. On the other hand, we should motivate researchers because there is a whole lot of other sources of funding. So they can go to other sources of funding, not from this 300, 400 crores, where they actually take money to study the biology of the diseases. Because because people, I know hundreds of people are studying cancer. Why not study rare disease?
But there is a lot of funding available to cancer studies because of numerous pharma companies are also involved. But
pharma companies are not giving much money to our research institute to do it. Mostly money comes from government.
So can I add to what Prasanna asked just now? Prasanna, see the way in which I would like to put it is that the government should fund till the preclinical stage, a few 100 crore at least, so that we come to the preclinical stage. After that, we need to then rope in the pharma companies, because once we have something ready for them, then they can invest and take it to a stage where you can jack it up the manufacturing and then reach the patients. So in MyoMission, we have actually kept the doctors with us, a clinical group, because once the preclinical stage is reached, we should be ready to do clinical trials. And that's where the pharma company has to also then come in, because then the bigger investment comes in at the clinical stage. And already if we have the doctors with us, that has to be done in a more disease specific way, where the patient groups can do the natural history studies with the doctors, so that we have that data ready with us. And once the pharma companies join in, then we can start clinical trials. So the government support we need basically till the preclinical stage, which I think if they give us 300 to 400 crore, we can develop 1 or 2 platform technologies like gene therapy or mRNA technology.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
In fact, all 3 can be developed: gene editing, gene therapy, and as well as messenger RNA. If all these platform technologies are developed for rare diseases and delivery, then it can be applied to almost every disorders.
Okay.
So can I ask Prasanna one question which is running in my mind, and I think it's probably emerging out of this discussion that we have today, which I think would benefit everybody. Sir, do you think Professor Bhattacharya and Professor Sudha, do you think if we collectively join hands to make a representation to the government to say that they need to, put in an X amount of funding for research, common research to be done? Can we define it in two ways? One, in terms of number of people who could benefit out of that kind of research which would come out, because I think at the end of the day, government also is, the first thing which comes to their mind is it's a rare disease. There are few number of patients, and the number who's going to benefit out of the funding which we are asking for is not really impressive, so they don't really care for it. But if we give them some indicative numbers to say that we are talking about 70 million, but okay, yeah, all the 70 million may not benefit out of the common research that we want to initiate. But at least if 25, 30, whatever percentage which we can define and say may benefit out of it, can that be defined? And can we give them some estimate number of years that it may take to do that research, so that the funds also may not be required upfront, but it could be, sort of split up in a phased manner, where they give up, every year they give some amount of money, and then so it becomes a structure kind of, it's a project in itself then, where we say, okay, we want to initiate this research. This is the kind of funds that we require over a period of time. And at the end of the research, we are expecting so many people to benefit out of it. So it makes more sense. It becomes a business proposal for them to evaluate and then, give due consideration. Do you think that such a thing is possible?
That I think that definitely you hit upon the point. That is not only possible, I think highly feasible, because it's not the Indian patient. India has a much larger, and our study also clearly shows that though we know 300 GNE myopathy patients, but we suspect that there may be 40,000. So, and not only that, Indian subcontinent, other developing countries, even if we have cheaper therapy, people from advanced countries will come to us for treatment if we offer them. And I think it is great. I think you can show that messenger RNA therapy is not only for GNE myopathy, but it can also for Pompe's disease. It can do for a whole lot of other diseases. All wherever the enzyme therapy is being done, you can use many of the, even blood disorder, you can use messenger RNA therapy. Gene therapy is going on for a whole lot of diseases. In our study, like Pompe's disease, your Rett syndrome.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir.
Yeah, and so if you develop the technology and you have the IP with you, then it's very easy to show that is financially also it is viable to do. It's not just.
Prasannaji, can we do something like this?
And not only that, Samir, not only that, it's goes much beyond. In cancer, also gene therapy is coming up, CAR T cells and other. The gene therapy is coming in a big way in cancer.
Yeah, so I mean, we can take lead over there in terms of saying, yes, it's a rare disease community which is working, but it's not only for rare diseases, but it can also be used for cancer, patients as well.
This Pfizer BioNTech vaccine for for COVID, it was actually set up, and other ones were set up to make vaccines for cancer cells, messenger RNA-based vaccine for cancer cells. Now it is coming up here. It will come up in rare diseases. So I think once we develop this technology, we should be. It is like if you have a delivery rocket, you can put in anything in space.
Absolutely, absolutely. Prasannaji, do you think we can do that together? We can make out a proposal and
we will be very happy. Sudha and I will be very happy if you.
Sure. Any other questions? Dr. Suresh, would you like to say something?
Yes, happy to see Professor Alok and all of you. I was thinking that especially these rare diseases and that too research projects, they are all more centered to the bigger institute and especially the metropolitan cities. Being in a place like Davangere, I always feel helpless to whenever these rare disease patients comes to us. Forget a treatment, even will not be able to diagnose them completely. And most of the clinicians try to just push off them to the higher center, but unfortunately, most of the patients are not affordable, and just they suffer and perish away. This is what I think, ORDI and the particular organizations should focus on involving the medical organizations like Association of Physicians of India or even IAPM. So many organizations are there involving the postgraduate faculty. We have nearly 500 medical colleges, and we have to at least initiate the process of creating a kind of atmosphere about research and involved in helping these rare diseases. This is what I wanted to convey.
Sure. Thank you very much. Amrish, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sorry. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Sudha ma'am and Dr. Alok ji for their Herculean, the task that what they are doing in Myo Mission is truly amazing. And I also feel very humble to be the part of that Myo Mission. Thanks, Dr. Bhattacharya, for selecting me in that. One thing I would like to add upon this discussion is we've been always talking about raising funds through the government organizations, through government agencies, and through the ICMR or DBT, and roping in Professor Raghavan as well. Now, this is all what we in our initial stages had done, and that's once we failed over there. Like, we went to ICMR, we went to DBT for funding for our gene therapy project, even for our CRISPR-Cas9 project. But when we failed there, we thought that it's better that we ourselves only fund. I mean, that's what our PM has always been saying, that we should be Atmanirbhar. So I think as what Samirji was telling, that why can't we make a presentation to the government going all the rare disease collectively and making a presentation?
Absolutely. This is exactly what is coming to my mind, emerging from this discussion today.
I want to add here something else, because going to the government, I have seen the comments that the Myo Mission, as what Dr. Bhattacharya had submitted. There were 6 to 7 reviewers who have given the comments, and those comments are pro government comments. I don't think I'm not very optimistic that the government will release the funds that easily. I mean, look at how crowdfunding. I mean, the rare disease policy. I mean, it was just a eyewash. It was just a hogwash that they have just put forward the crowdfunding. I mean, they are just shrugging out from their own responsibilities. I mean, if we have to go to the government, we have to understand that most of the time we are not going to get any funding from them. Why not we ourselves? I mean, we are so many groups out here. Why can't we raise the funding? I mean, for Myo Mission, we require 100 crores, I think, and not 100 crores in the one go, but in a different slots. The majority of the amount is going to the Narayan Netralaya for the development of the rare disease, for the gene therapy, which can be a platform for all the other diseases. Is it possible that we ourselves take up the funding? Why we need to rely upon the government? We are so many people out here. If our community, which is like we go and dine for 1,000 rupees and all every weekend, why can't we put that money into the research? I mean, we have such a wonderful leader out here, Dr. Bhattacharya and Professor Sudhaji. They can lead the show, and we can raise the funds for them rather than just going and making our presentations to the government. I think Prasanna has been doing it for so many years. We also initially did the same thing. Ultimately, when we failed, we took up the matter in our own hands and funded a couple of research projects that are going on right now in the country. Do you think, Prasanna ji and Samir ji, that this is something which is feasible? We spread the word in our own community.
Amrish ji, my opinion is that what you're saying is right, but let's leave that. That is an option which is always open to us. That is something which we can do. Ultimately, we may have to do that. I'm not denying that. But let us at least, try and counter the argument that, like you also mentioned, that you went to the government and they probably gave you a deaf ear in terms of they listen to you, but there's no action which is happening on there. Now, they have always been saying that there are much more critical illnesses or diseases that they want to tackle, like malaria and dengue and those issues where the numbers are very large. Let's give them that representation, the same thing on their platter, to say that, okay, you're talking about numbers, here are the numbers. And that's why I said it's a two-pronged approach that I wanted to address. We're talking about 70 million. Okay, now how many can be actually benefited from the gene therapy that we are talking about? Let's put a number over there. Let's put some estimate in terms of saying that, okay, these many diseases can benefit out of it. And if we give them a time plan in terms of saying, yes, it will take 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever, we want the funding to be released in this way. So it's a project which we are putting up before the government, and then if it still does not happen, we have no other choice. We have to do it ourselves. Let's do it. I'm not saying that. Yes, we need to do it.
Okay.
We can also try going to a place like Tata Trust or something, in a bigger project. If all of us go, I think Ratan Tata may listen to us.
Yeah, sure. I agree. So there could be other agencies under CSR also which we can do, and that's what I'm saying, Prasanna ji. Let's take this up as a project. Let's let ORDI do this. We can have discussions separately with Professor Bhattacharya and Sudha ma'am, and we can develop a kind of a strategy where we tell that this is what we want to be done. We are talking about it, and as I say, let's give both sides of the stories. The numbers who are going to benefit and the numbers we are losing because of rare diseases. Let's give them a factual position and tell them that if you don't do this, this is what are the consequences. So let's compel them. Let's get them to a situation where they don't find an escape route in terms of saying ये numbers बहुत छोटा है, ये numbers हमारे को attract नहीं करता है. So let's give them a justifiable proposal in that sense.
Yes, Samir ji, I agree with you and Amrish. So what we'll do is I'm also okay with this idea, and the very objective of this Let's Talk series is to understand among ourselves what are the ways forward. I think today we got one actionable point. I think from ORDI side, after this Race for 7 in March, we'll meet separately, Alok ji and Sudha ji and Amrish ji. Let's start out a program, and if possible, we'll also create a rare disease fund.
Jointly, let's do that. Let's have a research group. Yeah. And let's have a research. Yeah, sure.
Jointly, we can reach out to.
Absolutely. And I think let that be a takeaway for this meeting, at least, that we are moving forward in terms of setting up a collective approach to the government and individuals as well, which could be any of the corporates or any other the PSUs, for example. A lot of PSUs are doing all this kind of work. The research groups, if IQVIA can support you on Race for 7, I'm sure they can come forward and do something like this, and there could be many more agencies like them.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting for them also to see the scientific part of it, where there
is exactly. Yeah.
Later on, ultimately we have to go to the pharma companies to develop the drug and take it to the market. And if they see some seed being sowed in country like India, I think it's a welcome step. So definitely
absolutely
from this, and we'll take it in the March.
Absolutely. विकास जी, आप इस चीज से सहमत हैं जो हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? आपको लगता है कि ये हो सकता है?
बिल्कुल हो सकता है. अगर इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि अगर हम कलेक्टिवली एफर्ट करें, तो जो आप रिसर्च की बात कर रहे हैं या पेरेंट्स को सपोर्ट की बात कर रहे हैं, गवर्नमेंट तक पहुंचने की बात कर रहे हैं, गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी, देखिए गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी मेकर्स किसकी सुनेंगे? आप अगर आप बहुत उसको देखें तो जिनकी आवाज एक साथ होगी और जो अपनी बात सही तरीके से पहुंचा पाएंगे.
बिल्कुल.
दो चीजें हैं उसमें. मैं आपको आज भी बता सकता हूं कि आज भी अगर हम एक पेरेंट की बात करें, तो मैं आपको एक बहुत छोटा सा एक एग्जांपल सेट करना चाहता हूं कि मेरे पास में 2 हफ्ते पहले एक पेरेंट का वीडियो कॉल आया था कि मेरा बच्चा डायग्नोस नहीं हो पा रहा है, मुझे कोई डॉक्टर बताइए जिसको मैं अपने बच्चे को डायग्नोस करवा सकूं. तो आप विश्वास नहीं करेंगे कि वो पूना और बॉम्बे के बीच के किसी शहर की, नासिक के आसपास की शहर थी. मुझे मतलब इतना जान पहचान और इतना मेरे एफर्ट्स होने के बाद भी मैं उनको 11 फरवरी का अपॉइंटमेंट दिला पाया, जबकि वो ये बोल रही है कि मेरा बच्चा अनकॉन्शियस हो जाता है, बार बार वो खाते ही उल्टी कर देता है, उसका डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो पा रहा. तो अगर हम प्रैक्टिकल आज भी देखें तो आज भी कई हजार नहीं कई लाख पेरेंट ऐसे हैं जिनको ये पता ही नहीं है कि उनको कहाँ जाकर इलाज कराना है. और इवन जो डॉक्टर, जो इलाज करने वाला जो चाइल्ड केयर डॉक्टर होता है, वो भी कई बार नहीं बता पाता है या नहीं समझ पाता है कि इस बच्चे को रेफर कहाँ करना है. तो ये भी आज की स्थिति में भी हमें 12 साल मेरे को हो गए काम करते हुए, शायद आपको भी हो गए. डॉक्टर भट्टाचार्य या समीर जी भी आज 15 साल से काम कर रहे हैं. आज भी स्थिति ये कि हम पेरेंट्स को ये मालूम ही नहीं है कि बच्चे को लेकर जाना कहाँ है और डायग्नोस एटलीस्ट कहाँ करवाना है.
विकास जी, मैं सिर्फ एक चीज और कहना चाहूंगा. जो हम लोग ये बार बार बोलते रहते हैं, हमारे पास 7 करोड़ रेयर डिजीज पेशेंट्स हैं पूरी कंट्री के अंदर, लेकिन जब हम इंडिविजुअली कोई भी ग्रुप गवर्नमेंट के पास या किसी भी गवर्नमेंट एजेंसी के पास हम जाते हैं, तो हमारा नंबर वो 100 में आ जाता है, सैकड़ों में हम जिसको बोलते हैं, वो कोई 300, 500, 700, 1000 ये ऐसे नंबर. और जैसे ही हम वो नंबर्स बोलते हैं तो वो जो जिससे हम डिस्कस कर रहे होते हैं उसकी अटेंशन उसी टाइम खत्म हो जाती है कि आप क्या 1000 लोगों के लिए बात कर रहे हो, मैं यहाँ पर इस कुर्सी पर बैठा हूँ जहाँ पे मेरे को लाखों लोगों के लिए काम करना है। मेरे पास मलेरिया की प्रॉब्लम्स है, मेरे पास डेंगू की प्रॉब्लम्स है, मेरे पास कॉलरा की टाइप प्रॉब्लम। वो इस तरह के नंबर्स बताता है जिसमें फिर आप भी मायूस हो जाते हैं कि हाँ यार इनकी प्रॉब्लम हमारी प्रॉब्लम से बड़ी लगती है। लेकिन अगर हम वो 7 करोड़ लोगों की बात लेकर जाते हैं और बोलते हैं कि हम वो 7 करोड़, चलो हम 7 करोड़ को नहीं करेंगे, हम 3 करोड़ को तो ठीक कर लेंगे, तो इमीडिएटली उसका भी अटेंशन उस पर आ जाता है। हाँ, मैं आज उसके लिए बात कर रहा हूँ कि जहां पर 3 करोड़ लोगों को फायदा होएगा इससे, इनको आप इनके लिए कोई एक थेरेपी, इनके लिए कोई इलाज ढूंढ रहे हैं, और उसके अलावा पूरे वर्ल्ड में हमारा नाम आ जाएगा। आज की डेट में अगर हम कोवैक्सीन की बात करते हैं तो पूरे वर्ल्ड में हम लोग ने एस्टैब्लिश किया कि हम वैक्सीन बना सकते हैं, हम लोग का नाम है वहां पे। तो वो उस चीज को देखते हुए मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि वो 70 मिलियन को हम बिल्टअप तो करें, हम लोग बिल्डअप ही नहीं कर सकते, हम लोग उसी पे आकर वो इंडिविजुअली में आकर हम फंस जाते हैं उसमें। आई विल कंक्लूड दिस। सारिका जी, वुड यू लाइक टू से समथिंग?
Yeah, hi Sameer ji. So it was a lovely discussion. Dr. Alok Bhattacharya ji, you have given so much insight to all of us. Yeah, and I hope, yes, we are ready to, final everything. It's a good thing to finalize and put something in documentation that, yes, these particular diseases are being taken care of. We are getting food, we are getting medicines. These are curables, these are not curables. So we really need to list it out so that, when this handful of papers, it becomes a bunch, then of course that 7 crore or 3 crore or 200 or 300, the government then can really see the actual facts and the numbers and the data.
Absolutely.
Then I think, yes, of course, they can decide and they can rethink on the, on the strategies and the planning, what they want to do in future. Sure. Yes, that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Sudha ji, would you like to say something? Sudha ji, Dr. Sudha Bhattacharya?
Yeah, I just wanted to विकास जी जो बोल रहे थे उसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा और elaborate करने के लिए कि अभी जो प्रॉब्लम हमारी है कि चाहे नंबर शायद हमारे 7 करोड़ है पर हमें दिखते हैं खाली कुछ सैकड़ों में, तो उसका प्रॉब्लम एक ये है कि हमारे पास जब कोई इलाज ही नहीं है तो डॉक्टर फिर इंटरेस्ट नहीं लेते, क्योंकि डॉक्टर क्या करेंगे, पेशेंट भी क्यों जाएगा डॉक्टर के पास जब उसके पास कोई इलाज ही नहीं। तो ये भी एक समस्या है कि अगर कुछ इलाज आने लगेंगे तो फिर अपने आप डॉक्टर भी बढ़ेंगे, क्योंकि वो भी पेशेंट को जब उनके पास आएगा तो वापस पेशेंट उनके पास जाएगा, क्योंकि वो कहेंगे कि देखो ये इलाज है, ये तुम ट्राई कर सकते हो। तो एक विशेष साइकिल में हम लोग घुस गए हैं कि इलाज नहीं है इसलिए पेशेंट भी दिखते नहीं। तो आई थिंक अगर हम गवर्नमेंट के पास जाएंगे कि हम जब एटलीस्ट शुरू तो करें इलाज की तरफ, जब एक बार शुरू करेंगे तो पेशेंट भी दिखने लगेंगे, क्योंकि डॉक्टर्स भी फिर बढ़ने लगेंगे नंबर में। अभी क्या होता है, हम डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं तो पेशेंट खुद ही घबराता है कि मैं क्यों जाऊं जब डॉक्टर मेरे को हेल्प ही नहीं कर सकता। तो आई थिंक ये पॉइंट भी हमें रखना पड़ेगा कि हमारे नंबर तो 7 करोड़ है पर हमें दिखते इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि डॉक्टर्स भी इसमें कुछ हेल्प नहीं कर पाते।
Sure. Well, I think we can continue. We can, Prasanna ji, yeah, final comment from our side.
No, I think Sarika was raising hands.
Yeah, she's already spoken up.
No, I agree with Dr. Sudha ji.
Yes, Dr. Sudha ji is saying perfectly fine. Yes, ये एक situation है. Once we come to know the numbers, of course, and it's been listed out somewhere. Then of course, then we have doctors also, we have treatment also, we have medicines also. So it really need to be documented somewhere so that, that rare disease thing becomes a bunch of papers. And when we present it to the government, then they can really see the, the research we have done. So I think, yeah, they can move forward with us.
See, we are losing out. I think we are losing out on the strength. We know the numbers. The numbers are huge. We are the largest community of patients community in the country, or if you take it collectively, even in the world today. So, but we are marginalized because we we talk individually. The moment we get collective, the moment we get together, that's where the strength lies, and that's where we can move anybody. That's my personal viewpoint. Well, I think we can continue with this discussion endlessly, because it's such an interesting topic, and it's such an interesting speakers that we have today with us. Thank you, Dr. Alok. Sudhaji, would you like a final thing from your side, and then we'll conclude this?
No, I just, because when Sarika said,
this.
Sarika just wanted to elaborate on what Sarika was saying. She said that we should, categorize things. So I feel that one category which we should have is all monogenic disorders, because there are quite a few. And all monogenic disorders can be tackled with gene therapy or mRNA therapy or gene editing. So if we develop these platform technologies, then we can tell the government that it will help hundreds of monogenic disorders. And there are, even if there are hundreds of patients in each identified, it still comes to, a few, maybe a lakh. So then we can build up the numbers that way.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Well, thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. Thank you.
It was a pleasure, Samir. It was a pleasure to participate in this.
I think, sir, it's an eye opener for us to have you here. It's always a great pleasure discussing with you. The personal discussion and today the group discussion has actually been an eye opener for a lot of us. I think the take-home messages is very clear to all of us. We need to work collectively. There are no other options. There are no other ways that we can build up on this strength. We have a tremendous amount of strength, and we need to build on that so that we come to a successful point. I agree with what Amrish is saying, that we've knocked the doors, and those doors seem to be closed, but we need to continue to knock and make sure, and if not, we don't, nobody listens to us by our knocks, then we need to break the doors. And I would end with that, and thank you very much, Professor Bhattacharya, for this wonderful discussion, wonderful insights that you've given into the various research projects that you have initiated, not only for GNE myopathy, but for the entire rare disease community. Thank you, Sudhaji, ma'am. You have really given a big support for us in terms of answering all the questions, all the queries that we had. On behalf of ORDI and all the participants today, thank you very much, Professor. Thank you all the participants. I think we've had a wonderful discussion. We know what we need to do, and let's take this forward. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.